Hello, and welcome to the Breaking Your Cycle series for natural hormone healing to ease pain, boost energy, and create happy menstrual cycles. This is your straight up resource with practical advice for hormone healing that'll take you one step closer to relieving your hormone woes. So, before we begin, let's make a deal to commit to taking just one action after you watch this interview. I'm your host, Nicola Smith, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Roxy. Roxy is a period coach, nutritionist whose mission is to listen and empower women in their health journey by taking a nutrition-centric approach to healing and embracing the key role the gut and menstrual cycle plays in overall health. Welcome, Roxy. Thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm good, just enjoying my blend of concoction of teas here because I'm like
Yeah.
around ovulation. So, I'm just making sure I'm getting all the nutrients needed. So, yeah, it's a good week for me to do this, actually.
Amazing. I'm so excited for us to dive into the topic. I'm really excited about this interview. I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive in this one. So that's really, really exciting. So before we do that, I would love if you could just introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them about what led you to do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I took a lot of notes, so I'm gonna be kind of like looking back
Yeah,
and forth
I
because
love
I
that.
want to make sure that I give so much value in this session. I want to make it, I want it to pack a punch and I can give you all my knowledge. So I'll start by sharing some things about me.
Yeah,
So thank you for stating my mission. As you said, is to empower women through teaching them the key role that gut and cycle play in their overall health. And so it goes that today's session is going to be about the connection between your gut and your period.
yeah,
So for me, this started, I'm going to give like a very brief history about why I do what I do. For me, it started about in my early 20s, so about 7 to 8 years ago, when I was on the pill for about 6 years, just um, story as old as time,
yeah,
starting with the pill and gut problems.
yeah,
When I got off the pill because I was getting panic attacks and a lot of anxiety, I realized that everything went haywire. I missed my period. When I was getting them, they were extremely painful. I would end up in the ER. I had a lot of PMS. I gained like 10 kilograms in 6 months and I was cold all the time. My hair was falling. Everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong.
mm,
So I decided to do some investigation and I went to several doctors who all decided that I should go back on the birth control pill, even though I explained to them that, hey, I just got off the birth control pill after a few years. Give me like a solution. Don't give
yeah,
me a patch. And then because I went to about 10 doctors that told me the same thing, I got very frustrated. So I started, buying the books, reading the articles. I took my degree in nutrition, I did my certifications and everything. And then little by little, I found out that it's not actually, the pill that is the solution or, any other patch solutions or supplements or medicine. It's actually looking at your gut because the gut is the connection to everything that's happening in your body. It's like your second brain and the epicenter of health. And then because I had so many issues with my menstrual health and I was diagnosed with the thyroid autoimmune condition, which was explaining my weight gain, my hair
mm,
loss, my mood swings, my PMS, my anovulation, everything. I decided to start looking at this from a nutrition point of view because I tried the medicine
yeah,
side and that didn't work very well for me. So I started working on my gut. And then once I've done that, my cycle started coming back. My thyroid antibodies that are needed basically as a requirement to diagnose an autoimmune condition went back into normal ranges within a year because
wow.
it takes a very long time. Like, let me
But
just say, 1 year might sound like a long time.
yeah,
It's actually a pretty good win because it can take years for you to
yeah,
fix your gut like properly and thoroughly. If it gets to the point that you get an autoimmune condition, it's in a very bad place. Let me just
yeah.
say that. So
Was
once I,
it Hashimoto's?
yes, it's
Yeah,
Hashimoto's. Yeah, exactly. So I have, well, now it's in remission, but
okay.
back then it was pretty hard to live with. And so I realized that it was not just my gut, but it's also like my periods were impacted. I was not ovulating. I was missing my periods. I had a lot of PMS. I was arguing with my boyfriend a lot. I was not able to sleep come second half of my cycle. It was pretty much hell. But then
Okay.
with nutrition and healing my gut, step by step, I managed to get back my ovulation. I managed to heal my autoimmune condition. Like I said, antibodies went into normal ranges. And I finally stopped being bloated after every meal and no longer having PMS and like crazy boobs and headaches. It was insane for a while.
Mhm.
And now I can say like totally that I'm the healthiest that I've ever been because I focus on my gut. And because of that, everything else kind of falls into place. So that's kind of a little bit of my history. And that's what I want to focus today with you in this conversation. Just I know that the gut is not a sexy topic and poops are not sexy and period is not sexy, but it's trending. But I will blow your mind with the research that I have to share with you.
Love that. What a testimony. And I'm so ready for my mind to be blown with what you've got to share today. So just kicking off, you touched on it a little bit already, but why is the gut so central to our mental health?
Okay, so to explain this, I have to go back to where it all starts,
Yeah.
which is in the brain, where all the cycle hormones are produced, basically. When I say the brain, I refer to the hypothalamus and pituitary. So these are your CEO and project managers of your hormones. So you have a system that has lots of endocrine glands that are ran by your CEO and by your project manager. So hypothalamus and pituitary. I will refer these two as the brain just because they're a mouthful to say them like
Yeah, they are.
constantly, hypothalamus and pituitary. So basically, your gut and brain communicate all the time. That's why everyone says that your gut is your second brain is true. So basically, your brain, the pituitary and hypothalamus, I'll just say one more time, receives signals from the gut that you're well nourished, everything is good, you have no problems, you're receiving a lot of food, etc. What the pituitary and hypothalamus, again, there I go. They what the brain does with this signal is it tells your endocrine glands. So your endocrine glands are the glands that produce hormones. That's where your cycle hormones come from as well. So the brain tells your whole system of endocrine glands that we have enough nutrients to support you to produce insulin, to produce cortisol, to produce thyroid hormone, which is all essential for you to be alive. We also have enough nutrients for you to produce luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which are reproductive hormones that kick off the production of estrogen and progesterone. And then all is well. The feedback loop is good. It goes on and on. It goes from the brain to the organs, from the organs and endocrine glands to the brain. As long as the feedback loop is positive, we're good.
Mhm.
The problem starts, and here is where the gut connects so tightly with menstrual health and your period, is when the signal that comes back from your gut is negative. You're not eating well enough. There's something going on with your gut. You are having a leaky gut, which I'll explain in a second what that is. You're not absorbing the vitamins and minerals that are necessary to produce all these hormones, and then your brain receives these signals like something's wrong, something's breaking. So what does your brain do? Your brain prioritizes your thyroid, your cortisol, your pancreas, which produces insulin, because without this, you are not alive.
Yeah.
So instead of prioritizing reproduction and ovulation, it kind of pumps the brakes to luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which don't trigger the ovaries to produce estrogen and progesterone, which then kind of stop the menstrual cycle and you don't ovulate. You get an anovulatory bleed, which is a bleed that you get because even if you didn't ovulate, but that's not a bleed.
Yeah.
Or you don't get your period for months at end. And that is because your reproductive health is secondary to you actually being alive. Your body is so smart, it will not allow you to reproduce, to procreate, which is basically what your body is trying to make you do every month when you ovulate, create life, make a baby, because it's like, oh, this person doesn't have enough resources to even maintain basic functions like cardiovascular health, thyroid health, which is a hormone that is essential to every single cell in the body. It cannot produce insulin, which keeps your blood sugar stable and you full of energy and alive, basically. Why should I allow this person to reproduce? And that is exactly when things go south, your hypothalamus and pituitary, your brain, take your life as more valuable than you being able to create life. And that's where the cycle breaks. And that is the reason why. And it starts with the gut. Because if you don't get the nutrients that you need to produce all the hormones, going back to what I said initially, then you won't be able to give a feedback that is positive from your brain to your gut and to your endocrine glands.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that detailed overview. It's so, so helpful. You touched on like a few of the common symptoms there. So like you mentioned like the PMS, the cramps. What is the link within the gut to like those specific issues that a lot of women face? So for instance, like what is happening in the gut when someone's experiencing PMS or they're missing periods? What is going on?
Well, a lot is going on. So the connection, the link between, menstrual health and gut health and period health and menstrual health in general is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
So we know that poor gut health impacts cognitive function, memory, and it also regulates emotions. And when I say emotions, you probably are already thinking PMS or PMDD. But research also tells us that there are 23 gut bugs that, if present, contribute to menstrual disorders such as PCOS, PMS, and PMDD. And we see in clinical trials that subjects who have certain gram-negative bacteria, which is a fancy way to say bad bugs, so you have a lot of bugs in your gut. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. As long as the balance doesn't tilt towards the bad ones, you're good. But it's important to have bad gut bugs. For example, Candida is a bad gut bug, but you need it. It's absolutely essential. So the subjects that have certain gram-negative bacteria, which is the bad gut bugs, experience more anxiety, depression, and risks of PCOS. So the gut creates hormones as well as it breaks down hormones and helps eliminate excess hormones, such as estrogen, which we know that if we have too much of, we have like clot-filled periods, irregular cycles, as well as painful bleeds. So that's kind of like a summary of why, the gut is so intrinsically connected with menstrual health, because the more gram-negative bacteria you have, the more predisposition you have to have PCOS, for example, and mood disorders, because we know that 70% of serotonin is produced in the gut. Actually, no, sorry. 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. 70% of your immune system resides in the gut. And when your gut is not healthy, let's say you have leaky gut, and I'll explain what that means. When you have leaky gut, your gut doesn't produce a certain hormone that is a precursor to serotonin, which means if you have leaky gut, you cannot produce enough serotonin or at all. And that means you're more prone to mood disorders or anxiety or I'm gonna change my mood every week, basically. So that's why PMS hits harder people that don't have a healthy gut bugs or healthy gut microbiota, because they don't have the chemical ability when leaky gut is present to actually produce the precursor to serotonin, which is a mood booster. And that can be hard in the first part of your cycle, but it's not as hard as when estrogen drops, because we all know that estrogen is the mood boosting, everything is great and pink and unicorns and butterflies, and I feel unstoppable and I'm never gonna die, kind of feeling. And then when that goes away after the second part of your cycle, after you ovulate, and there's only progesterone, which is like kind of like the mood, chill, Bob Marley of hormones, and you don't have the serotonin to keep you on the straight and narrow, then you will experience more depressive episodes, like crying uncontrollably, being like not being able to make sense of things, having difficulty focusing, and things of that nature. So that's why, just take PMS as an example, in people with PMS that have problems with their gut, their mood is more affected in the second part of their cycle. And I said that I'll explain what leaky gut is. So basically, leaky gut is, I want to make this visual. So
Go for
basically,
it.
the gut has on the walls, inside the walls, like on the intestines, there is a line of epithelial cells that keep the bad stuff away from your bloodstream. So as I said, you do have negative bugs and you have certain proteins flying around there, floating more like it around there, and things of that nature. When you have leaky gut, which means there is a hole, so let's say these are your junctions of the gut. When you have leaky gut, there is a bit of a hole in these junctions. So you should not have any space between the junctions of your gut. But then in leaky gut, when you eat too much foods, too many foods that are inflammatory, or you take too many antibiotics, or you have a history of taking the birth control pill, this all can break or not keep these junctions as tight as they're supposed to be. So what happens when there's this space between the junctions of the gut? Proteins from the bloodstream go inside the gut, and bacteria from the gut can go floating in the bloodstream. And that's where we get an autoimmune response. That's why people that have thyroid autoimmune conditions or other autoimmune conditions, actually, let me rephrase that. That's why people that have problems with their gut are more prone to autoimmune conditions. So, how that impacts us is that we get this space in between the junctions, and then we get this inflammatory response as well and autoimmune response as well. So that is kind of some of the main ways in which your gut is linked to your menstrual health and period conditions such as PCOS or PMS, for example.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. You
I
mentioned,
also
so go.
Sorry, I also want to mention that in PMDD, there's been also proven in one study that certain gram-negative bacteria that I mentioned earlier are more encountered in people with PMDD. So I don't know the names of the bacteria, and even if I did by heart, they would be like this long. So you
Yeah.
won't remember them. But I would say that one of the first places to start if you want to heal like irregularities with your period, like PMDD or PCOS, or other, not just necessarily conditions, but also irregularities such as heavy periods, because as I said earlier, excess estrogen is eliminated through the gut as well. So if that's not healthy, then you're not going to have nice periods. Then I would start with the gut.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Because you mentioned also briefly a couple of factors that contribute to the gut lining becoming ruined, essentially. I'd love
Mhm.
if you could just talk a little bit more about that. So you mentioned like antibiotics usage. So I don't feel like a lot of people know what actually causes this situation to occur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what can cause leaky gut is I'll start with foods, right?
Yeah.
Because that's easy. Yeah, or nutrition basically. Alcohol can cause these tight junctions to like break. We are not made as humans to tolerate gluten.
Yeah.
We are used to it, right? So at some point in your life, you change. If you have experienced this, then you'll know what I mean. At some
I
point,
have.
you have allergies in your life. Yeah, I experienced this with allergies. Like I never had allergies before, and now in the spring I'm developing some allergies. That's to do with histamines, which is also to do with your gut. A
Yeah.
topic for another time, but just FYI. Um, but yeah, so alcohol, inflammatory foods like gluten, or soy, or anything that you're sensitive to. You don't necessarily need to be allergic, but let's say FODMAPs, which is um, foods like garlic and onion or eggplant or nightshades, basically in general, they can cause inflammation in the gut and cause this rupture in the junctions of the gut. And then going into other things, the birth control pill can cause leaky gut. The raw Accutane, like people that take that have problems with acne, they usually take antibiotics based remedies.
Yeah.
That can also completely mess up with your gut because you won't take it for like a week or two, like when you're sick. You will take it for like 6 months at a time, and that can have deep, powerful impacts. And also, people with a history of taking antibiotics for whatever reason, like parents giving their kids antibiotics every time they're sick, like a little bit, they gave them like a course of antibiotics and then they get sick again because they're kids. So I don't want to this what I'm saying to be interpreted as antibiotics are bad. No, they're life-saving medicine. Like they really should be taken. When they need to be taken, they should be taken. But I think we're abusing them because we
Yeah.
no longer have patience to wait 1 week to heal. We want it gone in like 2 days. So I think there's a problem with that, but people with history antibiotics usually tend to have develop leaky gut later in life. For example, I was the person that took antibiotics all my life as a kid, and I really paid the price with the stomach ulcer when I was like 14, 15, which I'm pretty sure that that's what triggered the cascade of hormonal problems that I had later in life. I trace it back to my gut in that moment. So yes, people with a history of antibiotics, people with a history of taking courses of Roaccutane or other creams or other antibiotics in the pill form for acne, and people that have taken the birth control pill. And then these are more like fast acting in the damage that they do. Nutrition, like alcohol and the inflammatory foods, take a bit longer to act, but nonetheless, they can make damage. They can do damage in time.
Yeah. Thank you for that overview. Especially like the point on antibiotics, because for a lot of people don't realize that it completely, emphasis on completely, wipes out your gut bacteria, good and bad. It erodes it completely. And that will cause a lot of issues that we've just spoken about.
I have a I don't want to share this wrong, so I'm going to say it in two ways just to make sure I cover the correct one.
Love it.
Um, I read some research in Nature the other month or so, that's why I don't remember so well, that said that some scientist invented an antibiotic that you can take with a certain probiotic that strictly protects the good bacteria in your guts.
Wow.
So when you take antibiotic in cases that you need to, like I don't think this is applicable if you take every month if you
Yeah.
get sick, but in a isolated event, if you take this particular probiotic, then it could protect your gut bugs, or they develop an antibiotic that doesn't destroy the gut bug, the good ones. There is one of the two. I think it's the second one. I think they
Yeah.
developed an antibiotic that does not destroy the good gut bugs. And yeah, that's it. That's it. Now that I'm saying it, I'm remembering. And they're only affecting, if they're wiping anything out, they're wiping the bad ones, the bad bugs. And it's kind of like laser focus on the problem because we know antibiotics are different kinds of antibiotics. So
Yeah.
there's actually some promising results with that. And it's not on the market yet because it's just been published last month, the trial, but I think it's coming. And I think that's really good news because, as you said, not many people know that antibiotics can ruin completely, wipe your gut bugs, the good ones that we absolutely need for breaking down vitamins and minerals, absorbing them, etc. So that's really promising. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. It's about time as well.
Yeah,
Well, you think about how long we've had antibiotics for. Yeah, you need to create one that doesn't destroy the good bugs as well.
that's true. Yeah, probably it was really hard to achieve because
Probably,
it
yeah.
took them
To
a
be
while,
fair,
but
yeah.
they,
That's amazing news, though. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about gut health and ovulation. What is the link there? Does the gut health impact the ability to ovulate at all?
yes, it does. So I want to start by saying that your period is not the star of the show, ovulation
Mhm.
is, because your whole flow of hormones revolve around ovulation. So your gut health absolutely impacts ovulation. So I'll start by saying that, well, I'll continue by saying that we have three cycles that every person that listens to this should be aware of. One is the hormonal cycle, which is actually I'll tell the three of them and then I'll break them down. The hormonal cycle, the ovarian cycle, and the uterine cycle. We need all these three in order to have a healthy menstrual cycle, a flow, no pain, no PMS, all the good stuff. The ideal, the unicorn. And I'll start with the hormonal cycle. So we all know that the hormonal cycle, we don't have a 24-hour cycle. We have a month-long cycle. Depends how long your cycle is. Anything between 25 days to 35 days is a normal length. And you should optimize your luteal phase to be more than 10 days because if it's not, then we have a luteal phase deficiency and you didn't produce enough progesterone. Discussion for another time, besides the point. But going back to that, we have the first part is the follicular phase where estrogen is queen. Then we have ovulation, estrogen starts going down, testosterone gets a little bump, and then we have luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone rising, rupturing the egg, and then going into the second part of the cycle, we have progesterone. That is the hormonal cycle. Then we have the uterine cycle. All the subsequent cycles are affected by the hormonal cycle. The uterine cycle is basically the endometrium lining thickening and thickening and thickening. So it thickens from about the second that you stop menstruating. So let's say you have a cycle of 5 days. From day 6, maybe even 5, it's already starting to build again. So it gets thicker and thicker and thicker. Estrogen helps build this uterine lining until the middle of your cycle when you release an egg. The point of building this uterine lining is to keep the egg in place. If there's going to be a baby and the egg is fertilized, it implants in that thick wall of the uterus and it stays there nice and cushy until it can grow and sustain itself until you give birth. But after the second part of your cycle, once your uterine lining is thick, progesterone keeps that uterine lining in place. This is the reason, and I'm going to mention this because I know a lot of people are like, why this happens to me? This is the reason why you bleed at ovulation sometimes for like half a day, or you spot, maybe not necessarily full on bleed. It's because when estrogen drops and progesterone rises, there's like a teeny tiny bit of time that there's nothing there. So maybe it's like a minute, maybe it's like 5 seconds, maybe it's 1 hour, but it takes a while for these, hormones to balance. And what that means is that some uterine lining will shed because progesterone keeps your uterine lining in place and keeps it there until it realizes after your luteal phase, okay, no baby, no egg, I'm just gonna drop it and try again next month. But the reason why you bleed at ovulation is because progesterone takes a bit to climb while estrogen drops. So there's nothing to keep that uterine lining in place. So that's why you bleed a little bit. So just in case, it's actually a sign of high fertility. So that's the uterine cycle. And then the ovarian cycle is basically the egg developing from a small follicle to a dominant follicle to a full mature egg that ruptures and then collapsing in on its own like a Death Star into a corpus luteum that releases the progesterone. All these 3 cycles are so vital for you to be able to get a healthy menstrual cycle, and they're all needing nutrients to maintain them across the cycle. So without iron, selenium, calcium, magnesium, zinc, this vitamin E and vitamin B12, these are the main ones, you will not be able to maintain these cycles. Not being able to maintain these cycles means not being able to, not to maintain, but to nourish these cycles means that somewhere down the line, something's going to go wrong. Estrogen is not going to be produced because luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone didn't kick off in time, or progesterone is not going to be produced because there was not enough nutrients to kickstart ovulation, or your uterine lining is not going to build or is going to build too much, resulting in barely any bleed or too much bleed with clots and stuff like that. That's really painful. So all these nutrients are essential. And where do we get these nutrients from? From the gut. And if you don't, you can eat all the foods that you want. Like you can be the healthiest person in the world and not be able to break that food down at the gut level with the help of your bugs to actually take what you need from it and then take everything out. I have clients that come to me and tell me, Roxy, I go to the bathroom and poop the second that I finish eating. And I'm like, that's not good because if that's what happens, you're not taking anything out of it. Literally,
it's just going in and straight out the door.
You're literally throwing your money down the toilet because you're not taking anything out.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to optimize. We want to take a step back and we want to optimize gut health to be able to support all these 3 cycles, and then you're going to fix your period. So it's always like, I don't want to just fix my period. I cannot just fix my period because I want to, like I'm so willing and I really want to. But you have to really take a step back and start with the gut. It's not with the period. You start with the gut.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So on the topic of starting with the gut, how does one support the gut health? What are the things that women should be doing to support the gut health and then in turn get our periods back?
The ideal, right? Absolutely. So I have 2 steps that I want to share with you. So we're starting with the gut, as I said earlier. So especially if you're post-pill, had raw Accutane, or have a history of taking antibiotics as a child, The first step that you're going to have to do, because all of this, as we spoke about it already, they ruin the lining of your gut and impair nutrient absorption. I would start incorporating, and I'll give you the exact protocol. I'll start incorporating some zinc tincture because zinc builds the gut lining and keeps it like nice and moist as it should be,
Mhm.
and promotes gut healing. And incorporate some bone broth and anti-inflammatory teas such as turmeric and ginger. You can go a step further and go through an elimination protocol and take out the inflammatory foods for the duration of while you take the zinc, while you take a lot of bone broth, etc., to heal your gut and speed up the process. So this is the first step that I would do. Once you've done that for a solid, I know I would start with 30 days, and I'll definitely take out alcohol in that category of inflammatory foods because yeah, it's might be hard to hear, but that's actually impairing your recovery. And everyone will be happy to hear that when you heal your gut, you can get anything back in. I never tell my clients to say bye to anything permanently. Your body just needs a freaking break, you know? It needs to be like, let me just go back to the way things were. Just let me recover for a second. Give me a moment to catch my breath. Once you do that and your gut builds its lining and you populate it with good bugs and it's all good, then you will not react the same to the foods that you had before. So maybe before you were having issues with gluten. I'll give you myself as an example. I
Me
would
too.
never say again.
Said me too.
You too? Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, you have better ways to cope with it. Your body is actually prepared, right? So I was never able to have any gluten, right? If I would have a piece of bread, I ended up in the emergency room many a times thinking I was gonna die because I was eating bread or something with gluten that I didn't know. I actually got stuck in India for a month in a hospital during COVID because I had a chapati or something. I don't remember what it was. And my body was not able to tolerate gluten. So anyway, after I actually took it out, I took it out for way too long. I took it out for a year and then I had a hell reintroducing it. You only have to take it out for like between 30 and 90 days. So either 1 month to 3 months, depends how much damage you have. And I have a tip to share with you to test the health of your gut in a second in step two. Taking that out um, until you heal and then reintroducing it back, you'll have no issues with it. Like I never see anyone that's properly healed
Mm.
that adds in dairy, adds in gluten, of course, not in industrial quantities, but like, you know, you have a slice of toast because you like it or you want it that is not necessarily sourdough, but just like a regular croissant or whatever. You're not going to have anything if you're properly healed. So that is my advice to take that out for a bit of time and alcohol while healing, and then you can add anything that you want back in. Step number two, once you've done step one, start adding foods that build your gut bugs, such as ferments and whole foods, and start slow with fiber. And this is really important because fiber can make you bloated and really inflamed if your body is not ready for it. So what I
Yeah.
would do, I would start with stews, with curries. There's like infinite amount of recipes that you can start with. Um, and fruit. Fruit has soft fiber that your body can break down much more easily. And then once you've done that for a bit of time, a few weeks, then you can start having some more raw foods or like harder fibers, like celery, for example. That can actually, doing this step by step, will make sure that your gut is taking it easy and gets enough time to recover. And the tip that I was saying earlier, how to do like an at-home experiment to know if you're actually good with your gut, get a can of beans or pulses, like either lentils or chickpeas or any beans, and have half of it. If you're bloated and in pain after, you still have work to do because beans have very hard fibers. So if you have it and you're not good after having half a can, or yeah, half a can, I think it's a good measure. It's a pretty rich meal, then you have more healing to do. Go back to step one, repeat step two, and so on until you can eat beans. And that's like a simple home experiment that you can do with 70p. Go get yourself a can and do it. And then you'll know exactly if you're already there or you still have things to heal. And the good news is that, again, science-backed, love my articles. Within 3 days of starting a whole foods diet, it has been proven that the colony of bugs in your gut adapt to new food and you'll start craving food that you've been eating. Like, I don't know if you've ever had a crave for broccoli all of a sudden at 3 p.m. on a random day, or like, why am I craving this? Actually, they've done experiments with women that love pears, and they've given them pears every day at 4 p.m. for, I don't know, a week, and then let them go back to their natural diet. And women were craving pears at 4 p.m. at the same day
Wow.
forever, like for the duration of the experiment. And the reason for that is that your gut bugs adapt very quickly to the foods that you give them. So it's not like you need 5 months until you're actually used to changing your diet and adding more whole foods in. No, you need 3 freaking days. Like it's not that much. And
Yeah.
you'll make such a positive change, and you won't have to try so hard for a long time. It's just those initial first days, and then you'll be able to eat whole foods and actually crave them.
Thank you so much for that. The body's just so fascinating, isn't it? And so incredible.
Incredible. Yeah, that's true.
So in terms of my last question, if you were to leave listeners with just one single action today as a first step or a takeaway, what would it be, Roxy?
Start tracking your cycle.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you start tracking your cycle, what's going to happen is you're going to notice where it breaks. Are
Yeah.
you ovulating? Do you have an increase in basal body temperature? How long is it? Do you have a long enough luteal phase that is 10 plus days? Do you have cervical mucus? Do you bleed for too long? How are you feeling throughout? So, oh my God, there's so many things that you can track with your cycle. It's insane, like how many changes you can do after a bit of time once you track your cycle properly. So I always say, yeah, if you do one key takeaway, then you'll know what foods to implement. Then you'll know a step-by-step method for you that is exactly tailored to your biology, and you know it will work because that's what you need. So yeah, start tracking your cycle.
Such a great takeaway because when you track the cycle, it's basically data. It's all
Yeah.
data points and it's about you and your individual self. And it will tell you a lot about yourself, where you can actually, where you need the changes, where you need like support and what to do. So yeah, I agree. Great takeaway.
Yeah.
With that being said, you have a freebie to share with everyone who's tuned in.
Yeah, I do. I have a cycle tracker that it's completely free to use that allows you to track the days of your cycle, and it actually allows you to track your temperature and cervical mucus. So these two are your key fertility signs. If you track this, everything will be populated in a data table that's going to tell you like exactly, like it's going to be a graph. It's going to be super cool but super simple. And then you'll see literally in a graph point with your own individual data how your cycle looks. Not just, you won't just look at like temperatures and then have to understand, okay, what's where. You'll have a visual as well based on the data that you input. And all of that is for free. And I shared it with Nicola, so she can share it with you. And I would say, yeah, start with that because it's super simple to use. I made sure that anyone can use it, and you'll get so much insights from it.
Sounds amazing. So that is going to be linked below this video. So definitely go and check that out. Roxy, it has been an absolute pleasure. This has been a fantastic conversation. I know a lot of women have walked away with a lot of gems from you, from this interview. And I'm just so grateful and thank you so much. I hope you have enjoyed as much as I have.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. I really hope I try to make this as value-packed as possible because I have so much to share. But I think I touched on some very important steps and I shared a lot of takeaways and actionable things because I
Yeah.
love actionable stuff. I like to make things that you can actually do rather than just like talk, 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 and talk. I also love to talk, but I also love to give actionable advice. So I really hope that I achieve that. And thank you so much for having me.
No worries, you absolutely did. Again, don't forget to grab Roxy's freebie. It's going to be linked below this video. And thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you in the next interview. Bye for now. Bye.